Good evening from the student of rhythm. I recently, just today actually, watched a very good discussion between Ben Spatman and Jennifer Roach-Lees about the creation account in Genesis. And for some time, I've been wanting to talk a little bit on this channel. Talk a bit about why I accept the theory of evolution and some things I've observed about how that's still a difficult thing for some members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It was hard for me when I was young. I think I was in elementary school or junior high, and we started learning about this, and I think I'd been warned about it, and I was annoyed at the secular humanists and atheists trying to teach me false things at school. My first year in seminary was 1991 to 1992, and it was the Old Testament. And when we were learning the creation account, the seminary teacher was passing on to us quotes from I don't know who, from probably late 19th century, disparaging evolution by pointing out various things about how maybe Neanderthal skeletons were just deformed and evolution can't happen because the scripture says that everything brings forth after its own kind. Things that didn't hold up. They didn't stand the test of time. I suppose that if I had gone a certain direction, in that as I encountered scientific writing from scrupulous and careful and methodical scientists who calmly laid out common objections to evolutionary theory. It's a theory! Common objections to the facts that underpin evolutionary theory. They would calmly bring up sort of the frequently asked questions, the frequently brought up objections, and they would dismantle them. And I was troubled by how much sense it made, how much sense the theory made, how much sense the facts made. What is one to make of this? And I came to a point where, for my part, I made peace with the idea that, as official sources in the Church have said, scientific inquiry is able to illuminate more and more of the how of creation, of how we find ourselves in this mortal life, whereas revelation is concerned with why. But there have been setbacks over time, over the years. I remember at one point, this must have been sometime between, I'm guessing between 2002 and 2006, and I had made peace with the idea that the story of the flood was not to be taken as a literal historical occurrence of water covering every bit of land on the whole globe. But I read an article in the Ensign that said we have to believe in a literal global flood, and it almost broke me. Later on, I've realized that that was not a statement that was produced by unanimous consensus of the first quorum of the first presidency and the quorum of the 12 apostles. And neither is there a unanimous consensus statement about the truthfulness of the theory of evolution available from the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And I wish I'd had a better grasp of this concept of how that defines what binding doctrine is. Because there was an episode, this happened about the early 2000s when I was trying to convey to some other young single adults the way that I had made peace with the undeniability of the factuality of much of the scientific lore about evolution. The facts that form and underpin and support the theory of evolution, that is to say, the framework that brings all the facts together in a way that makes sense of them and makes them into a useful map. I had studied this, in fact, at BYU. We'd had a whole detailed analysis, a detailed investigation into the controversy that there had been within the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, and how it came about that the Church didn't ever make a definitive official statement about whether we can or should accept evolution. I'd highly recommend that this interview. I'll put a link in the description. This recent interview with Ben Spackman and Jennifer Roach-Lees, because it's needed. I'm so grateful to live in a time when these kinds of faithful voices are saying this kind of sensible, salvific stuff. People have had the tactic of saying, well, one day it will all be revealed. One day all we need to do is just believe the scriptures. One day it'll all be revealed, how it all works, how it all fits together, and until then, I'm not thinking about it. The thing is, a lot of information about the how of how we find ourselves in this human condition on this planet has been revealed through scientific inquiry. Surely we're not going to go into the sort of religious paranoia that we can't trust the evidence of our senses and our minds and our intellects at all if they contradict with a traditional interpretation of some incomplete, out of context, ancient writings. And yet, back to this experience I had in the early 2000s when I was talking to some other young single adults. I was laying out this way that I had, even then, was coming to my own resolution of peace, of reconciliation, of accepting the scientific fact and accepting in my own very primitive way, because back then we didn't have this faithful scholarly analysis and commentary that we're so blessed to have now to help understand the mythical character of the Genesis creation story and understand it as we ought to have understood it all along. As temple liturgy, as ancient temple ceremony of a myth of leaving home and of ascending, of going back home, and how it's a malleable sort of myth. Well, I was doing the best I could with my limited understanding and vocabulary and ability to stand up to peer pressure. And there was peer pressure. There was a girl that I kind of liked. And she kind of, not meanly, but quietly but firmly put me in my place and shut me down. And just basically told me, if an apostle has spoken on this, then it's doctrine. In other words, cease your apostate thoughts and fall into line with what the prophet said once. The president of the church spoke on this already once, or apostles have said this. I can cite these talks or these books and their doctrine, so that settles it. The ironic thing is, I've come to understand this through my readings into evolutionary theory. Am I an expert on it? Of course not. But the beautiful thing is that there are scientists who are experts, and they've kindly shared their knowledge in ways that they calculate to make it understandable to lay people. And I will say this too, the best ones are the ones that keep their consciences intact in a way that they, even if they don't examine it fully, why and how, they keep their conscience, so they're aware that evolutionary lore, let's say, could very easily be used to justify Korihor's attitude, or Anton LaVey's attitude. And they don't. They take great pains to say, even though we talk about the motivation for some bad behaviors and the evolutionary biological basis for them, we don't condone them. But to understand where they come from is a valuable way of gaining mastery over them. If I am not aware of instincts that are baked into my body as part of its organic production, then I'm at their mercy, and I can be manipulated by these instincts in a way that completely blindsides me, and I'm unaware, and I'm doing all this. But if I am aware of it, because I understand these organic processes that went into the formation of this body that I steer, then I believe that we do have the agency to step back and reflect and take a contrary course to what our instinct would demand. I'm aware that some evolutionary biologists dispute whether we humans have free will. That's another story. I think that's their luxury belief, if there ever was one. And I'm aware that some people's opposition to the concept of evolution is basically on a basis like that they don't want nihilism, moral relativism, fatalism, and they don't want it to be used to justify the luxury belief that we don't have free will, or to justify the Korihor, Anton LaVey sort of attitude. But it doesn't have to. So this young woman that shut me down and tried to put me in my place, the beautiful thing about it is that I understand now that she was acting according to a female instinct. And so I don't really think about that interaction with any lingering irritation or resentment towards her. Like, she almost cost me my testimony. She was, telling me I had to, shut my mind down, and, she was like the party in Orwell's 1984. She was telling me to, just lump it and, pretend that 2 + 2 = 5, and I was so traumatized, and Mormonism is such a corrosive cult that, blah, 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 blah. No, I observe and reflect on this interaction and this experience, and I think, okay, I understand where she was coming from, and I would wish for her and others to partake of the fruit of knowledge that evolutionary theory offers. Later on, I'm going to start a series of videos where I'm going to read aloud an essay I wrote on this subject, and it's going to be a bit spicy. I'm just warning you, so stay tuned for that. And I've got some other commentary planned. I've got a project planned that doesn't really much have to do with what I'm writing, or does it? Actually, maybe it kind of does. And to understand how and see why, see how and why, how and why. Well, you'll have to keep listening, and I appreciate you listening, and I will not take any more of your time now. I will talk to you later.